Part of what I teach and preach in this program is to be your very best. In sales, you have to face your demons, you have to face yourself, you have to look in the mirror and really figure out and build self-awareness as to who you are and why you do some of these destructive behaviors. I know your story is going to be maybe more extreme than some people, but everyone's got vices, everyone's got demons, everyone's got struggles that they are faced with, but not everyone is aware of it. They think it's fun. They're like, why do I keep doing these things? So, what was your void, and how did you even determine why you were doing all these really destructive behaviors? Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our first Fireside chat of the year. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome my friend and peer, Anthony Natoli, who works in sales. If you don't already recognize Anthony, you may recognize him from LinkedIn or seen some of his posts. A little bit about Anthony. He's a former SDR turned President's Club winning AE who currently works as a senior account executive at LinkedIn. And one of the main reasons I wanted to have Anthony as a guest is because he really has an inspiring story that shows what humans are capable of. Just 4 years ago, Anthony was at his rock bottom. He'll tell you more about it, but today he now has the privilege of appearing on dozens of podcasts and webinars to share his story. He's been elected to the LinkedIn Sales Insiders Group, and he's coached and worked with over 100 SDRs and AEs on outbound prospecting strategies to help them build pipe as just a side project. I've had the pleasure of knowing Anthony for many years, and I'm excited to welcome him today. So, Anthony, welcome to the Fireside Chat. Great to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ian. I don't know if you remember, but a few years ago, you came in and did a meeting with Alex Kramer at Outreach, and I had just joined, and I heard your story, and I immediately connected with you on LinkedIn, and we've stayed in touch since then. So it's a very cool moment for me to be here with your group, and excited to dive in.
Me too, man. Well, thanks for coming out and everything. All these things come full circle, so it's great to now reverse it because I was talking, now you're talking to my group. So let's start off. In our pre-call, you shared some really personal things, and I just thought it was a great example, inspiring for anyone who's really looking for transforming themselves and becoming the best version of themselves. And I think a good place to start would be if you can give us a little bit of context to where you were just 4 years ago in 2019, and just let everyone know kind of where this all started, where this journey started.
Yeah, so I'm sure we'll get into it, but it started from a young age, a lot of childhood trauma. But 4+ years ago, a few days after Thanksgiving was really my rock bottom, my breaking point. Essentially, I had a gambling issue for as long as I can remember, since middle school, and I had done it. My parents were aware of it, and it was a classic case of telling them what they wanted to hear. I'm going to stop for good. And finally, my mom had caught me when I was home for Thanksgiving break from San Francisco. My family lives in New Jersey. And at that point, I was 27. I was $100,000 of bad debt, neck deep in it, personal loans, credit score in the low 500s. I was 60 pounds overweight, extremely unhealthy, massive gambling addiction, overeating, drugs, alcohol, porn, to really numb this void that I didn't really know was there until I became more aware on my journey the last 4 years. But I was really at probably the lowest point that I was ever at. And, the reason why it was such a tough moment for me is my mom is the most important person in my life. And she basically told me, you're no longer allowed back into the family unless you get help. That was about 7 a.m. My flight back to San Francisco wasn't until 8 p.m. So I basically got kicked out of the house, sat in the airport for 12 hours, and really had to sit with my thoughts and figure out what was next for me. And, ultimately I had two paths. It was either I give myself a chance at getting help and maybe figuring this out, or I can continue down a path of self-destruction and lose everything. And, had I taken that path, probably wouldn't be here talking to you all right now. It was a very classic case of being someone who was successful in their job, had all the friends in the world, outgoing, thinking this person may have it all put together, but on the inside was completely broken and was acting out. And for whatever reason, my mom caught me that day. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. And Yeah, that's kind of where I was at just 4 years ago. It feels like yesterday. And I was just telling you, and I was reading some text from that period of time in 2019 where my mom was saying what a disgrace and how disappointed she was, and it feels so fresh just looking back on it. But yeah, I'm just grateful to be here and excited to share more about my journey with you all.
So take us back. You said there's a void. You didn't know what it was. I think just for context, for anyone listening, part of what I teach and preach in this program is to be your very best in sales. You have to face your demons. You have to face yourself. You have to look in the mirror and really figure out and build self-awareness as to who you are and why you do some of these destructive behaviors. I know your story is going to be maybe more extreme than some people, but everyone's got vices. Everyone's got demons. Everyone's got struggles that they are faced with. Would you mind but not everyone is aware of it. They think it's fun. They're like, why do I keep doing these things? So, what was
Yeah.
what was your void, and how did you even determine why you were doing all these really destructive behaviors?
Yeah, it's interesting you say like you don't even realize you're doing it. I was so unconsciously acting like this. I just thought it was my normal. I just thought this is who Anthony was. It wasn't until I started, it wasn't just I had a gambling addiction. It wasn't that I had an overeating addiction. It wasn't I had overspending or I was addicted to, going out and partying and getting validation from people. I don't think that like at the surface, those were just the behaviors that filled this gap within me. And I think once I started to understand where those things came from, I really started to address those. But where it actually came from, and so my parents got divorced when I was 7, and because of that, my mom had to work very long hours, and so I was 7, 8, 9 years old in after school programs until 5 o'clock by myself, and my dad wasn't really present, wasn't the best father. And there were some weekends where, he didn't even want to see my sister or I. So I think that started to manifest as I became a teen, and that snowballed into when I became an adult, this feeling of abandonment, my mom not being around, and food started to become like a comfort for me. Watching sports started becoming a comfort for me. And, you know, my mom got remarried, luckily, when I was about 10 to my stepfather, who basically raised me. Extremely blessed to have him. He's basically like my dad. And so all these things basically manifested into my teen years, and I started gambling, and I started being so insecure with my friends, even though I was like captain of the football team and played all these sports. And, I was super needy and insecure, and I would get super chippy with friends, and I took things so personal. And at 19, my dad basically wanted nothing. My biological dad basically said, "I'm not your dad anymore. Don't ever contact me again." And then that further manifested into college and into my adult years, where this feeling of having a chip on my shoulder, I'm going to prove the world wrong. And if I got all these things, if I got money, the girls, if I was the life of the party, then I would be good enough finally. And so where it stemmed from was this feeling of just not feeling good enough. And I didn't realize, though, those were the reasons I was acting the way I was until I started to go to therapy and do the 12-step program and really address the thing that I had been ignoring my whole life, which is younger version of Anthony, and knowing where these behaviors stem from. And like Ian said, right, your case might not be as extreme as mine, but I truly do believe that our mind is a set of programs that are made up of things that we're taught as kids, how we were raised, the things that we consume. And my program was all messed up, as you can tell from my story from where I was at 4 years ago. But we have the ability to reprogram, like an iPhone, updating our internal iOS, if you will. And so that's kind of the steps that I took. Was one of the first of them being understanding where these behaviors were stemming from.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Your story mirrors mine quite a bit when you're talking about this. I didn't really put two and two together, but my parents were divorced too. I grew up with my mom, who was working multiple jobs as a single mom, and I always gave her credit and said she's amazing. She's providing for me and my brother, and kudos to her. But I was in the after school care, didn't get necessarily what I needed at home because my mom was just trying to survive, literally trying to survive and raise her kids. And I don't blame anyone for anything, but it makes a lot of sense when you go externally to feel wanted, to feel special, to feel validated. And that sounds like, and my dad wasn't around either. He was in New York, and then he passed when I was 19 years old, just like your dad left your family in a different kind of way. But it's amazing how these addiction stories have that kind of origin story, that people don't get what they want at home or growing up, and so they end up turning elsewhere. So that resonates quite a bit.
Yeah, it was, and even, I still don't have it figured out. 4 years later, like I'm still struggling with things every single day. Like the overeating thing, I didn't come to terms with and admit that it was like a real problem until probably a year ago. And then I started to deploy the tactics that I learned from the gambling habit, and realizing like, hey, where is this coming from? And then I was like, man, this makes a lot of sense. When I was a kid, I turned to food for comfort because I was this scared 7-year-old who was all alone. And so, I built this like trauma zone. So when I would gamble, or when I overeat, or I get insecure with my girlfriend or past relationships, that was Anthony's trauma zone. That was Anthony as a kid trying to make himself feel comfortable because he couldn't like sit with those feelings. He needed to escape in some way. And so, yeah, it's crazy how those things manifest as an adult.
Yeah, and a lot of times, again, people have a stigma around addiction, and there's so much of it in sales. It's just so common. I hear it time and time again, but it's not always, hey, I'm 100,000 in debt, or hey, I'm going to lose my family because of a porn addiction, or something that extreme. But fundamentally, it's the same thing. You don't, just because you stop the behavior doesn't mean you stop being the person that craves, or so it often appears in other forms. So that sounds like that happened to you. I'm curious just what you do or what tools you have now when you see that addict showing up, when you see that kind of same cue that's causing you to overeat that previously caused you to gamble. Like, what are some of the strategies or tools you use just to recognize and address that so that it doesn't result in other destructive or unhealthy behaviors?
Yeah, and yeah, it's something I'm still working on for sure. And 2024 is all about identifying those areas that are still exist for me that feel like areas that I need to really address, that may be not in alignment with the standard I really want to live within. But it's taken 4 years to get to this point of perspective, right? Like sometimes things have to get worse before they get better, but it doesn't always have to. And so I think the first thing that I get to what I do today is I accepted like I had this problem, and I was ready to change for me. And once I accepted it for myself, it was like this weight lifted off my shoulders. I didn't have to hide anymore. And then that propelled me in being able to ask for help. And so I still go to therapy. I see two of them, therapists, one for eating, one for just like overall maintenance, and challenging me on my self-limiting beliefs. I read a ton of books, but I'm not reading them for like the dopamine of being able to say, hey, I'm going to read this book and I'm going to check the box. Like I'm trying to learn and extract something that I can apply to my life and take action on. I think before I made the changes, I was very much in the camp of making myself feel better by buying a ton of books or doing something to try to make myself feel like I'm making change. But it wasn't really until I started like actually taking action and addressing the demons and taking what I was learning from therapy or my 12-step program and really putting in the work. And that work can look different for everyone. But for me, it was getting my butt up and going to Gamblers Anonymous meetings on Saturdays and Sundays when all my friends were going to brunch. It was, putting myself out on LinkedIn, out there on LinkedIn and sharing my story and getting messages from people that were affected positively by that, because that helped me in turn. And so this idea of like journaling and meditating and trying to positively help others has really helped me in my journey. And I think present day, what I do is I constantly take personal inventory. So every year I develop I call it the standard, right? What is the standard that I want to live to and within? And then within that standard, there's choices, actions, habits that I know need to align with that standard. And now what I'm able to do is check myself every day. Hey, am I living in alignment with the standard that I want to set out to live by, and hold myself to? And every day is not perfect, but because I'm constantly checking myself and being real with myself and having those honest conversations, and also with my therapy and my family, because I'm very open with them, I'm able to really identify like where are the different areas in my life that need to be addressed. So um, that's something tactically that I do today. When I feel like those triggers that come on, I call someone, I take a step back. I'm able to recognize that I don't need to make a decision right now. I can put the phone down. I can walk away for a second. I can go out on a run, go work out, something to get my mind off of it so I don't take action on it. But I think the biggest takeaway is I don't have to do this all on my own. I could ask for help. I don't need to make big decisions or any decision on my own. Like, it's okay to ask for help.
There's two things you mentioned which I think are super important. And again, for anyone familiar with recovery, you're speaking with a language they'll understand. But for those that aren't, right, you talked about taking a moral inventory. I've talked about this as what's called an integrity gap. So what I say the integrity gap is what are your values and then what are your actions and behaviors, and the space between your values and your beliefs and your action behaviors, the space between is called the integrity gap, right? If you're not living your values, right, then you're going to feel shitty. You're going to feel out of alignment. And that's really what you're talking about. So can you kind of talk about how do you do a moral inventory? What does that process look like for you, where you identify your values, your morals, your standards? How often do you do that? And then like, what does it look like to live those standards, given that this is so fresh and it's something you're actively doing?
Yeah. So I just went through this process, a couple weeks ago, where I was laying out 2024. And I think having goals is super important, but it's the systems and the habits and the choices around the goals that are going to get you there. It's not the goal itself. And so for me, I try to identify like 3 months out at a time, like what I really want to accomplish. Because if I say, hey, I want to do X, Y, and Z by December, to me, that feels too far out. But what are the things I can do over the next 3 months to put myself in position to be closer to that goal in December? And so I think it starts broad with like the goal itself. Then what are the choices and habits that I need to be making every day? And then I think in addition to that, I really identify like who's Anthony in 3 months, who's he in 6 months, who's he in 12 months, how many times does he call his mom, like who's he hanging out with, how does he talk to himself, does he skip workouts, like is he prospecting on days he doesn't feel like it, like who, like I just really try to draw this ideal person up, and then I really try to act as that person now, and I try to act in alignment with the person that I really want to become every day. And I think the personal inventory, it happens each morning. I will brain dump, right? Like how I'm feeling, how yesterday went. Was there anything significant that occurred that I need to address? And then every week I look back on, hey, did I focus on what was in my control? Did I, if I'm training for a half marathon that's in March, did I complete my training program, or did I skip a day? If I have a quota that I'm tied to, obviously I do as a sales professional, did I actually do the steps needed to get there, which is prospecting, which are my follow-up emails, which are my discovery calls? Like, did I actually put in the work that's needed to get me to that goal? And so those are some of the questions that I'm asking myself. But I think the most important thing is really need to outline what is that standard that you want to live within, and who's the person you want to become. And don't just idolize that person, start acting like them now, because that's in that process of acting is when you start becoming this new person of yourself, because ultimately the person that you want to be or may not want to be in 6 months is all a series of your choices, actions, habits leading up to the next 6 months. So future you in 6 months can be really happy, or they're going to be really pissed, depending on what you do over the next 6 months every day. So that's how I try to look at it.
Well, you mentioned a few things that resonate. First, the annual goal being broken down to quarterly goals. We were literally yesterday, we did a training on this in my group. here where we talked about annual's too far, it's overwhelming, but if you could just focus on the next 12 weeks, it's digestible, and it's attainable. So I love that, right? Shortening the window that you're looking so you don't feel so overwhelmed. And the second thing you said is it's not about what you're accomplishing, it's about who you're being. So being able to identify what your ideal self looks like and then asking, are you in alignment with this ideal self? So as part of your morning routine, you said you like wrote down your journaling. Is this like an affirmation that you're using I am hardworking, I am committed, I am disciplined, or is this something you'd like think about every morning and just say, here's how I want to show up today? What is kind of the detail of that process to define what your best self looks like?
Yeah, I definitely do the like I am good boyfriend to Gianna, who's my girlfriend. I am the best son I could possibly be. I definitely practice that. But for me, I think what's been really helpful is like a morning gratitude practice, because I'm someone who can very often think about the future or I think about the past. And for me, in those states, I start to feel a little bit of resentment of like, I can start comparing myself. And what I found is when you're in a state of gratitude, it's impossible to also be in a state of resentment at the same time. And so for me, I'm just like brain dumping all the things that are in my life. And it can be easy as like a good night's sleep, or like I'm able to breathe without having a cough or like a stuffy nose. And it's the smallest things that I'm grateful for, because that starts the day with a perspective that, is saying, hey, look at all that you have, and stop focusing on what you don't. But yeah, the affirmation piece is big. And then I open up, I have my standard in my Notion doc. And then I look at my day ahead. Is my plan for the day in alignment with that standard? I think one of the biggest things that I made a mistake on even a couple of years ago was creating these goals and then not looking at them every day. So I'm looking at, it's almost like a vision board, but it's on a Notion doc, but I'm looking at my standard and my values every day as a reminder. Otherwise, at least for me, I'm gonna forget, and that's when we could start going through the motions, and old habits start to pop up, bad decisions, without even realizing it.
Well, I think we talked about this a little bit, but what I'm hearing, and I know with myself, like this is a big problem, is my standards are pretty fucking high for my own day and productivity and my business and my client success, everything. And most days I don't meet my own standards, right? But fundamentally,
Totally.
I don't use every minute of the day for something really productive. I get distracted with busy work. I mean, same things that many people struggle with. And it's very hard to meet a high standard. What do you do? What's your process for, when you don't meet your own standards? When you say, hey, I'm going to work on prospecting today, and then you let other things become more important when they're not, right? Because this comes up every day in my coaching sessions. And I think it's really important to hit on, like, there is no such thing as perfect. But what does that look like for you, having gone through recovery and having now a higher standard for what you hold yourself to? What happens when you get off target? Do you reset at the end of the day, or do you beat yourself up still? Like, be super transparent about like what's going on with you on a day-to-day basis.
Totally. Yeah. So like gambling, I haven't made a bet in over 4 years. So I haven't missed a day there. But like overeating, I'm super hard on myself. Like if I eat like shit, I'm like, why did you do that? You're a loser. You're an idiot. Like I really bad negative self-talk, or like getting on the scale. And what I realized is like I'm perfectly imperfect, and like that's what makes me me, and I accept that. And I'm trying to in 2024 accept that fully, and realize that like I'm not going to be the perfect eater. Like I'm not going to have the perfect habits and routines every day, and that's okay. And give myself some grace, because for me, I tell myself some like fucked up stories in my head, like that you're not good enough, and it's led me to a path of destruction. So I know exactly where it can go, and so I'm really trying to be focused on telling myself different stories. Like that old story about your eating habits doesn't have to be that way, and giving myself grace. But I will say, with like working out, I definitely think like that's one of my big goals, and part of my standard is having a healthy mind and body, so that one day when I'm a father, I can hold my kids and coach sports, and that's like what drives me to be healthy. And it's totally okay to miss a day. But what I don't think is okay is like miss 2 days in a row because you don't feel like it, right? And so I really try to be honest with myself. It's like, hey, do I need a rest? Do I need a Netflix night, or is it like just me being undisciplined? And so I really try to figure out what that line is. Mine is like, hey, it's okay to take a rest day. It's okay to take a play off, but get back in the game the next day, or does it really mean that much to you? And have that honest conversation and really try to figure out what is that line of needing a rest, or am I just being lazy? And I think really having, like I said, those honest conversations with myself has been helpful. Like there's some days where I don't feel like getting on a prospecting block or getting on a discovery call, but I know that's what needs to be done. But other days I'm like, I don't feel like it, I'm not doing it, But the next day I come back and I'm like, okay, if I do another day, I'm even further away. So I need to actually put in the work. So it's that constant battle. And you and I were talking about in our pre-call, it's like the journey never ends. Like it never, the stuff doesn't go away. And Mark Manson, who wrote the book Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, talked about this idea of like, don't try to, eliminate problems from your life because they can't go away, but fill your life with problems worth giving a shit about, and then building your capacity to deal with those problems. And so that's really what I'm trying to do every day, is having that honest conversation with myself.
I think it's important for people to hear, you're never fixed. Just because you don't gamble doesn't mean
Never.
The underlying issues. It's a lifetime of brain patterns and, synapses and neural pathways that are formed that you literally are going to, you don't recreate your personality, right? You don't recreate your need to be stimulated. So it's just going to come out in other ways. And I just think it's encouraging for people to hear, because it's easy to say, oh, this person comes in and puts on a good face and, they're all done and now they can help other people. But for you to come up here and say, hey, I still struggle with this every day. It's just in a different form and I'm still working on it. And grace is the key. That is encouraging for a lot of people who these things, maybe they're not the same degree as what they used to be, but they still repeat themselves in other forms.
Yeah, literally yesterday I had a conversation. Like, this is what happens inside my head. I'm trying to lose, like, one of my macro goals is to lose 30 pounds. And it cascades down into like smaller whys and bigger reasons for doing it. But one of the micro choices that I need to make every day to get to that goal is what I put into my body and what I need to eat. And I literally can feel moments where the ego of Anthony, an old version, trauma version of Anthony, is like, go snack and eat it. And then like my balanced version of myself is like, no. And so it's this constant battle of choice. And that's really what it comes down to. And so I have that dialogue with myself every day for a number of things. Stay in bed, it's so comfortable, but no, you have a half marathon to train for, and it's a constant battle. And it all really comes down to choices. Like I said, I could eat the candy bar and be further away from my goals, or I can make the right choice, right? So it's a constant battle of it feels like tug of war. So
for people that struggle with trying to fix habits on their own or vices on their own, what kind of advice, having overcome? Well, I'm curious, just to take a step back. So you hit this rock bottom with your mom telling you you're out of the family if you don't change. What was the next step for you, and kind of like what happened from there that got you to getting the help that you needed?
Yeah. So the literal next steps were that I started Googling Gamblers Anonymous. There's a big stigma around it in my head, and I was super scared. I didn't know what to expect. Started going on Reddit. I found like a problem gambling like thread, and that was super encouraging to figure out the fact that like I'm not alone. Once I started to realize that I'm not alone and there's people out there to have, not to compare myself, but way worse situations. I was like, wow, maybe I can change. And so like my first couple months were taking action to prove that this was possible, because it was literally like Mount Everest ahead of me. And I had never done anything like this in my life where I needed to make such drastic change. And so I was scared shitless. I didn't know what to expect. And so I just like ultimately gave myself a chance, and I seeked out resources. And I was just finally honest with myself. I was going to therapy for a year before that, and I was lying to my therapist, like throwing, and my mom was paying for this because I had gambling issues before, and I was throwing her money down the toilet. And so I finally started to be honest and real with my therapist, and I started reading the books and started to implement what I learned in my life. I started going to the gym again. I started to journal, a lot of research online and articles. And again, it was this idea of being like, I'm not alone, and there's people out there like me, and I can do this. I can make the change. I hope that helps. But that's like that all those days of doing that and making those choices ended up leading to, months and years, and here I am now. We could spend a whole day on more of it, but that in a nutshell is like the approach I took.
Yeah, I mean, you subtracted the thing that was taking up your time and resources and headspace, and then let's end on before we open it up. I want to I call this addition by subtraction, but by removing that which doesn't serve you, especially the main thing that you're struggling with and have always struggling with, that opens up space, time, and energy to be able to go do what is God's purpose for you, or go serve other people, or go, become your best version of yourself. So you kick the gambling habit. It's been 4 years. Congrats on 4 years of. I know you just celebrated your 4 years sobriety, so congrats on that. What happened afterwards? Like, what did that do to enable you to, to start to serve, to get a better job, to perform? I know it's translated in many ways that are pretty inspiring. So kind of talk about that journey. Once you kicked gambling, how did you get here, really, 4 years later?
Yeah. So 4 years later, debt is all paid off. I've got enough money to put down payment on a house. Hopefully one of these soon. I can't talk too loud.
Should I send this to your girlfriend, soon to be fiance? Is that going to be a spoiler?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
And so I lost the 60 pounds of weight that I put on. All the debt paid off. Obviously, abstaining from gambling was huge. And I think the biggest thing for me was the perspective that I learned. And I had this almost feeling that like it's now my duty to turn my struggle into like my purpose, if you will, and trying to help other people. So I started posting on LinkedIn, started talking about prospecting because I was working at outreach and it was a good way to build pipeline. But then someone told me like, hey, why don't you share your story? And then I started to do that, and I started to really realize what an impact I could have on other people by just simply sharing like what I am now. And then I started building connections with people. First of all, if I hadn't made the changes, I wouldn't be with my girlfriend. I wouldn't be able to live where I do. I wouldn't have the job that I do. My relationships with my family are completely repaired. I've eliminated people and things out of my life, which I think is the best part. I've made room for new hobbies and new habits. I think my favorite thing of all of this is that I finally feel like I'm good enough, and I don't feel like I need the validation from other people to make me feel good, and I don't feel like I have to prove my dad wrong anymore or anything like that. It's that inner peace and that serenity that I feel on a daily basis. That is the biggest win for me. It's like I'm finally comfortable with who Anthony is, and that's the best part, because that radiates to other people and brings the people that and the things into my life that I want ultimately.
So you overcame this, and Was it a divine calling to start sharing? I mean, this is pretty vulnerable stuff. I don't know many people besides you and myself and a few others who go on LinkedIn and say, hey, I was a gambling addict. I struggle with overeating, and just like put yourself out there. Where does that desire to share and be vulnerable come from for you and to serve?
Yeah, I think well, one of the steps in Gamblers Anonymous and any recovery program is to, continue to pass on what you've learned and help other people. And this is my way of doing that. And I think I did it once, and then I got messages from people, and I saw how much it resonated. And I was like, I'm doing myself a disservice and other people, because there's people out there who need to see this. And I let go of the opinions of others. Like, there's people that talk about me in Reddit forums, and because I'm cheesy or whatever. Like, I don't care, because I just had an SDR from Gong hit me up and say, your recent podcast completely resonated with me. I'm in a shitstorm right now and I need help. Mm-hmm. That's why I do it, because we're real people and we deal with real things that are nasty at times. And I get so much fulfillment from sharing my struggle and seeing other people transform and even just become a little bit aware that they can live and think a different life. Like, that's way better than closing any deal or any amount of money to me. And because to think that 4 years ago I could be helping other people is like, it's mind blowing for me to even think about. And that's why I do it. It's not, I don't really get, I mean, if I do coaching with people, yeah, I get some money from it, but like, I don't really get anything other than people probably judging me, doing it every day. So it's really to help the people that are out there that need it, and build genuine connections with people because they see who I really am. And it allows me to continue to show up as like my authentic self and not hide behind some facade that I would put on for years and years. And it continues to show myself that I am capable of living my truth, and it's okay if I'm me. Like, this is me. And when you can own your flaws, that's what I think builds confidence and accepting those.
And how has that impacted the way you sell and engage with clients?
Yeah. Like, I used to be the neediest, most insecure seller, where if I didn't hear back, or, a prospect was like giving me mixed signals on a call, I was just like, I was super needy, like a guy chasing a girl around, and like, it was just bad. I would send multiple emails, and, I realized prospects can sense that energy. And my manager one time got an email. We lost the deal, and she basically told my manager that she felt like I was desperate. And I was like, damn, I have to change something. And so going through this journey, I'm now so indifferent, and this is going to sound so cliche, but I'm so indifferent to the outcome of winning or losing that I know my time is valuable. I know their time is valuable, but I'm here to see if I can help you. If I can, great, let's dive into it. If not, that's great too. My worth isn't predicated on that outcome. And I think that has been the biggest shift. And my energy now is just, I'm me on calls, and people feel that, and they want to talk to me, and they want to open up because I bring their guard down. And I'm not there to just sell them something. I'm there to say, hey, let's see if there's an opportunity to help. If so, great. If not, like I said, all good too. And I think that shift and again, I was in a state where I needed that deal to make me feel whole. So like, if I didn't win that deal, my self-worth went down the drain. Now it's like, I built a good life for myself, and I do things outside of work where if I lose a deal, like, of course I don't want to lose, I'm competitive, but I know that doesn't make me a bad person. I think that's the difference. And prospects and my managers and my teammates, everyone can feel that energy for sure. And so it's definitely been a welcome shift. And, I've had the best years of my career since I've been in recovery, go figure. So
it's not a coincidence. I'm not asking that because I knew the answer ahead of time and asked it because you work on yourself. Here's what happens
Totally.
when you change your habits, when you overcome something as extreme and severe as being 100,000 in debt and your family telling you that they don't want you anymore if you go get help. If you could overcome something you struggle with to that degree your whole life, that builds an immense amount of confidence and trust in oneself. And when you have confidence and trust in oneself, that radiates to other people around you, and they can feel that and they can sense it even when you're not talking. And so being at peace with yourself is the key to being the top salesperson in the world. That's one of the common denominators of these top salespeople. We've had Brandon Fluharty and Jamal, and we just had Chris Stewart, who was the CEO of Berkshire Hathaway and came from Oracle as a salesperson where he started. It's this common denominator of gratitude, authenticity, just being interested and curious about other people. Scott Ingram, I can go on and on and on, but there's these ubiquitous qualities in really, really successful salespeople, and they're the opposite of what you think when you see the stereotype of, Glenn Ross, or Wall Street, or some of these images of the fast-talking, high-pressure salesperson. They're just not. Mike Fiasconi, who's on the call, right? It's just humble, interested, authentic, curious people who are here to help and serve, and you could feel that. So it's not surprising in the least that your results have been the best they ever had post recovery, and the same thing happened to me. So my final question, and then we'll open it up to the group, is a lot of people, again, they may not have the extreme addictions that you and I faced in the past, but they're struggling with beating themselves up over little habits, like not wanting to prospect, or not working a full day, or getting distracted with busy work. And that seems to be more people than less, right? It's more than half the people I coach easily are daily kind of dealing with this micro, I call them death by 1,000 paper cuts, distractions, going to the phone, whatever.
Yeah.
And they have this guilt complex at the end of the day. So what I would say is, for people that haven't hit a rock bottom or don't have the extreme type of situations where they're going to lose family, what do you say to people who want to change but are just having trouble, doing it on their own, and they may not think they have such a big problem where they have to go into 12-step or these more prescriptive type of programs?
Yeah. So the best learning I've had from this comes from a book, It Takes What It Takes by Trevor Moawad. And the premise and the answer to this is, whether you like it or not, your choices compound. Like, they're either going to compound for good or they're going to compound for bad. And so I think, like, no one, it's this idea of delaying, or this idea of instant gratification. Pushing something off is like, it feels good. You're like, oh, I can like go do something that like gives me dopamine or whatever, and a quick dopamine release, or I can do the hard thing that doesn't feel good right now but may pay off. Like, that's the constant tug of war that I was even talking about yesterday. Do I eat the piece of chocolate or eat the piece of the vegetable, right? Like, of course I want to eat the chocolate, but I know if I continue to eat the vegetable every day, that compounds to where I want to get to go. So you need to think about the future you, and realize that your choices that you make today impact you. And what I always think about is, if I'm thinking about like big goals, 80-year-old Anthony on a rocking chair, did he go for it, or did he like take the easy way out? And when I say go for it, I mean, did he have discipline? Did he choose the thing that was going to get him closer to his goals? Did he leave it out all in the field, or did he ignore the things he needed to do? And I think for prospecting, it's so easy to ignore, especially as an account executive when you got all these deals. But think about you in 2 quarters. Like, do you need the pipeline or not? Okay, well, if you need the pipeline, is prospecting going to get you closer to that, or is not prospecting? And then you have no one else to blame but yourself, because ultimately that goal is going to come down to the choice that you make today. And I hate to make it sound that simple, but it is, but it's not easy. So just because it's simple doesn't make it easy. It's very hard to do that and make that choice. But I think if you make that choice enough times where you delay the instant gratification and you do that hard thing, doing that hard thing gets easier. You build discipline. Building habits is an act. it's not a feeling, right? Feeling motivated to prospect, that goes away, right? New Year's resolutions. I'm feeling pumped. I'm feeling motivated. I'm going to lose 30 pounds. In 3 months, that motivation's gone because it's a feeling. The only thing that's going to keep you going is that discipline, that choice, that habit, that system. So try to build systems around your prospecting, right? Start with 3 accounts per day that you prospect into and hold yourself accountable to that. And then have a conversation with yourself at the end of the day. Did I actually prospect those 3 accounts or not? And so try to build those systems around those habits that you're trying to implement. And think about your future self. Don't screw them over is my advice.
I think just the simple act of defining what your future self looks like and who is the best self is something alone that most people don't do, right? So taking the time to say, how does best version of Anthony act? And that gives you a frame of reference to say, is this aligned or is this misaligned with the best version of myself? Because those choices come up, like you said, not just every day, but probably hundreds of times every day. What choice am I going to make right now? How am I going to respond to my kids? Am I going to yell at them or am I going to listen? Am I going to be pushy with my spouse or am I going to be attentive? Am I going to prospect or am I going to check my email and do busy work, right? It's constantly. And the second thing you said, which I love, is it doesn't feel hard when you train your brain because you're always doing the hard things. It feels normal. What feels hard is being comfortable. That feels hard because you're always used to doing hard things. So when you get comfortable, it feels like, whoa, this is weird. I don't like this. I'm out of my routine. I'm not as this one. I better get back to doing the things that are hard because that's who I am. So once you start in the journey and you do it for long enough of training your brain, the hard things don't feel hard anymore. They feel normal. What feels hard is being too comfortable, right? So it actually can, you can rewire your brain, and that's what I'm hearing from you there. So thanks so much for coming on. At this point, what I want to do is just open it up to the group to ask some questions for the next 12 minutes or so. We'll do a Q&A. If you guys can raise your hand using the emoji reaction button, anything you want to ask Anthony, personal development, change, prospecting, any kind of discipline stuff, he's a great person to reach out. So let's go ahead and open the floor to questions. Leslie Adams, you have your first question, so go ahead.
Thank you, Ian. And Anthony, thank you for being on the call. And I'm Leslie Adams. I'm over in Wilmington, North Carolina, and I work for a company called Lumen Technologies, and I'm an account manager there. But more importantly, I'm about to celebrate 5 years sober. And that when you...
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. And what you're talking about at your stage in life is, like, to me, so freaking remarkable that you saw it, you addressed it, because you and I both know some people won't put the brakes on when you did. And I just have so much admiration for you doing this at this point in your life, knowing the freedom that you have now, because, like, we're free, you know? It's not easy, like you said, but it is simple, and the freedom that comes along with it is crazy. But this is really that's more of a comment. You know, my question is: you talk with people, they reach out to you on LinkedIn. You know, I struggle with this. So many people, they aren't a full-blown addict, right? Whether it's eating, drinking, drugs, shopping, working too much, exercising too much, right? At what point are we crossing that line to problematic, right? Detrimental, where we should be addressing it and pulling it back? Because I didn't start out as an alcoholic. It was just drinking. But somewhere a line was crossed. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and thank you so much for the kind words. Really appreciate it. The thing I think is important is understanding, like, is the behavior that you currently have, is it making your life unmanageable? Like, and or those around you, right? Is it affecting them in a way that, like, needs to be addressed? And yeah, like, unfortunately, like, for some people, it has to get worse before it can get better. Like my therapist says all the time, you know, some people need to bang their head against the wall 1,000 more times before they're ready to make a change. But there is the opportunity to make that change before that has to happen. But I do think, my mom wanted me to change 1,000 times before I didn't change for myself. And so it's really hard to dictate for someone else, like when they should address that behavior. And they really need to be ready to make that change for themselves. But I think if I was advising someone else who was going through something, it's really write down how you feel when after doing that behavior. Do you feel proud of yourself, or are you feeling bummed out? Like for me, when I was 60 pounds overweight, one of the exercises I went through was like how I felt because my clothes didn't fit, and what the results of were that my insecurities and my knees hurt and I couldn't exercise. Like I keep that handy. I still have that written down somewhere, and I could come back to it. Like I don't want to go back to that. So I think if I was advising anyone, it's like writing that stuff down, and are you fed up enough with what that behavior is causing your life to be in order to make a change? Like 4 years ago, I was disgusted with where my life was at, and I had enough. I was ready. But days before that, months before that, years before that, I wasn't. And so it really depends on the individual and when they're ready to take that step. It's hard.
I would add to that. I think Anthony nailed it, but how do you feel about yourself, right? What is your self-talk? If you're telling yourself you're shitty, you're a loser, why'd you do this? That's a sign that you need help, because anytime you're beating yourself up, or anytime that you're, causing harm and you're in conflict with your values, right? When you remove those things that are out of alignment, like you just are empty inside. There's no guilty complex. There's no shame. And then you can go and serve, because you're not feeling like an imposter. You're not feeling like a hypocrite. So it's not just how do you feel, right? It's like, what are you saying to yourself after you do these things? And if you continually every day beat yourself up over things, that's really a sign that your behaviors are out of alignment. And again, I think all of us have things we can work on and changes we can make. And I know I do. It's a forever thing. But that is when those things become less and less extreme and more kind of micro level and little things, then it's about optimization versus transformation. Transformation is the journey of completely changing yourself, like Anthony did, in every big way. And then optimization is noticing these little things that can be improved upon. So that's really a telltale. Let's go to thanks Leslie, and congrats on your recovery as well. Let's take Shane as our next question.
Thanks, Ian. Sorry, my connection might be a little bit slow, so let me know if I'm lagging. But yeah, just to echo what Leslie said, Anthony, it's so inspiring to hear your journey here, and just want to thank you for sharing it. I think men in sales, men in general, people in general, but particularly men, we need to talk and be vulnerable, and for you to share in a forum like this, in a forum like LinkedIn, it's unbelievably inspiring. And a lot of what you said resonated with me. I've certainly got my own vices. Gambling is one of them, but where I was able to start getting help was in hearing someone like yourself years ago be able to share their journey, and it started me out to start talking about it and to share with others. And I think it's such a domino effect hearing someone like yourself sharing, and it's super inspiring, man. So I just wanted to thank you. My question is definitely not as insightful as Leslie's, but I love sport as well. And I think it's disgusting and very off-putting to see how gambling has just taken over the sports that we love. I remember growing up watching Premier League, and it was all about the sport. Whereas now you've got, even the commentators at halftime are talking about, who's going to score the next goal and giving out odds. You look at basketball, it's the same thing. It's so off-putting, man. And it's disgusting to see that they're willing to, knowing the impact that they're having, the negative impact they're having on people's lives, that they're still, allowing sports gambling companies just cannibalize the sports we love. So I just love to get your thoughts on, sport today, and do you still watch? Does it have an impact on you given your history?
Yeah. So I didn't, I was scared to watch for like the first year. and my sponsor and recovery advised me not to if I felt that way. Over time, though, I started to watch my specific teams that I liked, like baseball, so watch the Yankees and the Jets, and football, as miserable as they are. But then I quickly realized, like, I used to watch college football and NFL football, and it consumed me. But then when I realized I didn't have any action on the game, like, I didn't really enjoy it that much. I don't watch basketball anymore. It's funny what happens when you don't have, action on the line. But yeah, I echo what you say. I think it's insane what happens, and more and more young people are getting into those Gamblers Anonymous meetings, and the stories you hear are incredibly sad. And yeah, it's a real problem. And so I now have the awareness to know that, like, no one's going to give you $200 of their own money and not expecting you to lose it all in return. So I know it's all a bunch of bullshit when they talk about the bonuses and free money. And it's like, it's such a scam that doesn't bother me anymore, but it definitely did in the beginning. But now that where I'm at, I'm able to watch a game and enjoy it. And it's brought my love for the actual sport back a bit, and not so much like caring about who's going to win or anything. But yeah, I definitely don't watch it at the volume as I used to. And there's definitely, like, I'm not watching cricket at 3 a.m. anymore, or like Australian women's tennis at 5 a.m. like I was, some crazy stories. But yeah, completely agree with what you're saying.
Cheers, man.
Awesome. Thanks, Shane. We have time for one more question, and we're going to turn it over to Dan. Go ahead.
Hey, Anthony. Hey, thanks for sharing your story. Nice to meet you. I'm a comment followed by a question. I think my comment is, sales is such an interesting space. All of us obviously are choosing to do this for a living, but man, it is rife with landmines and traps for overwork, beating yourself up, like feeling the need to impress others, to be liked. I mean, so many different traps that give us all head games. So my question for you is, given everything you're accomplishing outside of work, bettering yourself, lots of heavy lifting going on there, lots of hard work, yet at the same time, you're choosing to do one of the most challenging jobs out there. Like, why sales? Why are you doing this while doing everything else?
Yeah, for sure. I don't think it's going to be something I do forever, but I don't put it on a pedestal anymore. And I think the why behind why I do it has changed drastically. How I view sales now is it's given me the ability to earn to do things in my life that bring me joy, like travel and support potential family, and to eat at restaurants when I feel like it and not have to worry. And so I think that the why behind what I'm doing and to earn the income and having a strong why behind it has allowed me to stay in the role and want to continue to do it. I used to view it as like a way to, I'm going to make a shit ton of money so I can go buy a bunch of dumb things and be number one on the leaderboard so everyone thinks I'm cool. I was doing sales for all the wrong reasons, but then I realized, like, hey, this could be a really good container for me to support the lifestyle that I want to live. And so that's why I ultimately do it. I do think in the future, though, I will do something different. But then again, this is allowing me to save for that next thing for myself. If I wanted to move into, a manager role or do my own thing one day, like, this is allowing me to set myself up for that. And one of the things that I started to do was, living off of my base salary and making sure that I'm budgeting properly, and everything else that I earn on top of that is I don't do it on my own anymore. I have a financial advisor. I have people helping me to make sure that I'm set up for success. But again, to answer your question point blank, it's allowed me the opportunity to do the things that I want to do outside of work that would give me a lot of joy. And that frame has been super helpful for, on the days that I feel like I don't want to do something at work. It's like that reminder of, like, hey, this is going to help you in the future.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, but I also will say, if I could go back to the career choice, when I was after college. And if I know what I know now, I don't know if I'd do it, but I'll never know that answer. I'm in it now. So
Yeah,
I think it's, go
Ian,
ahead.
your comment, or I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, I think it's everything you guys are saying. For anyone listening who's in sales, like, it is hard, it is stressful, it lends itself to addictive behaviors and self-talk, and it is a performance sport. But if you think of sales as like being an athlete, right? If you think of yourself as an NBA player or NFL player, we're entering playoff season soon, like, they are paid to perform. Right. And in order to perform, they have to get their rest. They have to exercise. They have to meet certain standards, and they have to have success on the field. Right. And if they don't, then they're gone. And that's the pressure you're under in sales. And if you accept it as such and embrace it as an opportunity to grow and to be at your best every day, and all the mental challenge and the mental toughness that's required to have a long, sustainable career in sales, it can be its own growth opportunity for you in terms of everything that you're trying to do personally is going to reveal itself in sales. The addictions are going to come out, the self-talk is going to come out. So if you look at it as a training ground to be the best version of yourself, it is phenomenal, right, in that respect. And then you get to a point where you realize, maybe I've mastered this, now let's go to a new training ground, let's do our side hustle, let's go serve people in a bigger way besides just getting the sales. But until you've gotten to that point, like, sales is going to be a good mirror of where you are in your life, and all those things are going to come out. And I think that's what I love so much about it, is it gets to challenge you every single day and measure your toughness and your discipline. And if you are the elite, the best of the best, you will get paid like an athlete. You will get paid $500 to $1 million a year. You're not getting paid for that because it's easy, because it's not going to test you. It's because it's such a hard job that income opportunity is there, just like being an entertainer or an athlete or any business owner is going to be. So it's such a good training ground, Dan, and for anyone listening, for what life presents. And if you can master sales, again, you can master anything, because it is that hard. And so to master sales, you have to master yourself, coming full circle to why Anthony's on the call today. Is a journey of mastering self, then transcends to getting the best results in sales. You can't be the best salesperson until you are the best version of yourself. Dan, I think you were going to comment.
Oh, just really quickly here. I'm grateful to you, Anthony, to you, Ian. I came up, I'm probably a little bit older than most people on the call, but I came up in an era of selling where all of the literature out there, all of the training was, it was about imposing your will on your customer. It was really about, like, sell them with enthusiasm, don't take no for an answer, like, close the sale, right? It was Glengarry Glen Ross, like that. And that is a heavy burden to carry into a call, knowing I have to convince this person to buy what I'm selling. Otherwise, I'm not good at what I do. I'm not a good salesperson. And for years, so you talked about software programs running through your brain. Like, grateful to you guys for putting this stuff out there, because I'm having to reprogram a lot of stuff. You know,
good.
The weird thing is, the sick part of it is, I was successful, doing that for a lot of years. So it fueled that. I was like, okay, more of that, but it's non-sustainable, and it will chew you up.
That's not how you ride the roller coaster of sales for the long run. To ride the roller coaster of sales and business, frankly, entrepreneurship, it's all about detaching from the outcome and attaching to the right inputs in the process that will lead to the outcome you want. And that's what you measure every day versus the scoreboard, the revenue, whatever else, because that will come if you have the right inputs every day. And if that is what you celebrate, that will lead to success. So, and serving, being of service and letting go, right? You can only do what you can do. And I think, Anthony, you've been of great service to a lot of people. I hope people listening, if you, if anything resonates and you do need help, I'd encourage you to reach out to me, reach out to Anthony, get the help you need so that you can become the best version of yourself. Anthony, anyone who wants to hear more about your story or learn from you, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, you can just go to my LinkedIn. I have my DMs there. If you need anything, happy to chat, happy to help. Again, I don't have all the answers. I just have a little bit of perspective on going through some stuff. And yeah, I think the professional athlete is a great reminder. They all have trainers, they all have coaches, they all take care of themselves. And I think sales professionals are waking up that, it's okay to do all those things as well. So one thing I want to leave everyone with. But yeah, LinkedIn's cool. Just hit me up. I'll respond.
All right, everyone. Well, thanks, Anthony. Thanks to everyone who's joined us today. Happy New Year, and wish you guys the best. I'll see you for next month's Fireside Chat. Take care.